All right, welcome back everyone to another SBSN English show or roundtable. Um, Today I'm joined by Kevin, Ryan, and Sophia, and we'll be discussing Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. A tidy little novel set in the Great Depression uh, on farmland. Um, the subject appears to be how much people suffer, the unlucky, the poor, uh, the homeless during the Great Depression. And common themes discussed are friendship and I suppose poverty. We will go well beyond that today. And to start, I think we can begin with who is Lenny Small? Um, any guest can jump in whenever they wish. Who is Lenny Small? What does he represent? Is he just a mentally challenged, large man?
Peter, I think that Lenny Small is so first of all, Lenny Small is this guy who basically copies exactly what George does and tries to follow all of George's orders. And he also has immense power, though he doesn't know how to control it. And when he kills, he often doesn't realize the certainty of the situation, and it's often by accident. And I feel like a very good representation for Lenny Small in our world would be the military, because they share many similarities with him in the way that they also try their best to follow these orders. They all are like marching the same and everything. And also, I think that often when they kill, they don't realize the full certainty of the situation. And
Maybe,
often it's kill or be killed. So I feel like they don't do it completely intentionally either.
right. I think the word you needed was the significance, not
Yeah,
the certainty of what
yeah.
they're doing.
I thought
No
that.
problem. Um, Ryan, do you want to elaborate on that connection?
Okay. I
Yeah,
feel like Lenny and George together make what is our military in the real world because, like what Kevin said, the military is Lenny is the military in our world. He often kills without knowing the consequences, but he also follows the orders and tries to copy what George does, which is and George represents the commanders, the generals in our world, who who have a certain degree of understanding of the people they're killing, but yet they still carry out the orders and tell our military or Lenny in this case to do it. Yeah.
okay. Sophia, any other evidence that this might be a good or fair reading of Lenny and George?
Um, yeah, I don't think I really have anything to add right now.
Right, and then I'll add a couple notes on Lenny's name. I think the full name would be Leonard, the first three letters of that being Leo, Leo, which are Latin for lion. Lion is an animal often used in at least by Western aristocracies, Western European ones. The lion symbolizes power on, are they family shields, royal shields, uh, the lion rampant, not sure what they're called sometimes. A common symbol used. There, of course, we had, was it William the Lionheart? So there's this animal associated with Lenny, and this is supported by chapter 1, in which the narrator on 3 or 4 occasions uses a simile to compare Lenny to an animal. I believe a horse, a bear, I've forgotten the others. He is not quite human. And I don't mean to pick on military people, but yeah, this applies to a lot of people, I believe. We don't fully appreciate the value of life. We're not quite fully intelligent. We obey orders blindly. And we can't remember what happened 3 days ago, as is Lenny's one of Lenny's weaknesses, his memory. Are there any good parallels to our current situation, our coronavirus situation? Anyone see anything there? People not remembering, people not thinking for themselves. Taking orders. No?
Maybe the medical staff? Well, no.
I'm thinking of people in general, but yeah, medical staff, like people in any business, tend to take orders. That's how our economy is designed. It's all little hierarchies, companies with little hierarchies, and they may sometimes speak about or promote group work and two-way communication, but ultimately there is no company that really works that way. No, the general population, are we in a situation now where it's embarrassingly obvious that people are just not thinking for themselves and not remembering the past? Well, you are much younger than I, so I do remember bird flu, swine flu, other flus that were sensationalized and that were no worse than regular seasonal flu. So when our leaders decided to treat this flu as something of grave, something as a grave threat to humanity, I just have to shake my head and think, well, what about all the other flus that were hyped up to similar degree, but for which we did not have any lockdown? And despite that, the death toll remained very low, especially compared to more serious diseases. As for taking orders, you surely, one of you must know of some examples of people doing exactly what they're told without thinking. Well, I wish I could ask a larger audience, but maybe another time. I mean things like, well, one-way traffic in stores, you have to walk one way. Do we really think that viruses are going to, can be avoided by one-way traffic? Washing your hands. Has no one read that you have to stimulate your immune system in order to stay strong? I could go on. But let's move on to next topic, I guess. Kevin, would you like to suggest one?
Another topic to talk about?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just. Okay. I think something we can talk about is Lenny and George's dreams, perhaps.
Okay, let's do that. Those are the two dreams. Big issue. Anyone want to launch into that first? Sophia or Ryan?
So
Could
I
you remind me
believe,
what the dreams were about? Because it's been a while since I read this book.
Sure. Anyone else want to volunteer? I talk too much.
I believe George's dream was, to put it simply, was about like living a good life, like living on a farm, being married, you know.
It seems like that. Yeah, the word married was never mentioned, but yeah, he wanted a
Exactly.
girl. Or, yeah, correct. And Lenny's dream was?
More on the childish side, it was,
Pen to rabbits.
yes, you can.
I couldn't hear you, Kevin.
No, I was just saying, it was 10 to rabbits.
Yeah.
In that tone, because we were just talking about George's ambitious dreams.
Yeah, tending rabbits. Well, not so much tending them as touching them, I suppose. He's got something of a fetish for soft things,
Yeah.
perhaps weak things. So, can any of you identify with George's dream? None of you have a desire to own land?
Like,
No.
I don't think I have a, okay, you can go ahead.
Well, because if I did have land, I wouldn't know what to do with it.
Yeah, you haven't been given the skills to know what to do with land.
Yeah.
Correct. That's thanks to our education system. Which, by the way, that seems to have been its whole intent was to get people off the land, into factories, into offices, into the new economy that's no longer based on the land, but is based on industry and technology, bureaucracy. Yeah, that's an honest point to make. Kevin, how about you?
Wait, what was the question again?
Can you identify with George's dream?
I mean, I guess I would want to own like a large part of land and just get to be in charge of it. Because then you, like, the feeling you would get when you know that you own a certain part of land, I feel, and also just to build a good lifestyle on.
Yeah, I thought at least Ryan, you might say that, it looks very tempting to have your own land because you'd be free to walk about at your leisure, outdoors.
Well, if I really did own land right now, would the government allow me to walk outside on my own land in this
Absolutely. Yeah, in Canada, you're still allowed to walk on your own property.
But right now, isn't the whole point to not go outside?
Well, that's what the governments are saying because this is kind of shorthand for saying we don't want you to mingle and mix with other people.
Well, yeah, that's true, because it's my land. I can do whatever I want with it.
Yeah, people are allowed to go in their backyards and front yards. Anyway, these rules are not actually law. There's no legislation yet for any of this, I believe. Farmers need to work on their land. Yeah, you say that, well, property belongs to us, government can't dictate, but that's not entirely true. They will overstep their own authority and try to control what people can do on their own property. That's quite normal. They already charge homeowners and condo owners property taxes for property that they own. How can you be taxed for something you own? Well, they do it. What is the reality about, land ownership. I think it's common that most people don't appreciate land anymore. What is the evidence for that? What are some signs that people don't care about land anymore? If you just look at their properties or how people live or where people choose to live. Anyone see evidence that land no longer has any perceived value?
Yeah, I believe the trees in the Amazon forest are being cut down for economic purposes.
Right, right.
And if we understood what role the Amazon forest played in our environment as a whole, we probably wouldn't do that. We probably wouldn't make a decision that stupid, right? So yeah, there are obviously many obvious reasons how, showing that we don't appreciate land.
Right, although I think by land you're now meaning nature. I was thinking of something simpler, like just square footage, ground. Although, yeah, it's you made a good connection. It is, of course, just part of nature. But when you look at it, do you know anyone who has ever said, I would love to own a piece of land and grow my own food, take care of myself? Anyone?
No.
No. Where do?
I think that's what my mom kind of wants to do.
Oh, good. Yeah, there are some older people, my generation, who might be tired of living in cities and have fond memories of country living. But the majority are keen to live in not only in city homes or suburban homes with very little land, and what land they have they just cover with useless lawn. But there is a trend towards living in condos and apartments with zero land. And I think that's being promoted now with our smart cities, even claiming that this is the environmentally responsible way to live, as if taking care of yourself, growing your own food wouldn't be the most environmentally responsible way. All right. Perhaps we should discuss is it time for Curly? Yeah, anyone want to start the discussion on Curly? Come on, guys, I expect you to be ready and roaring. Curly and Mary. What does Curly's name mean? Possibly hint at. What ethnic group has the curliest hair?
I actually don't know. Never really noticed.
Oh, come on. It's how about people of African descent?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Right. So tell me about Curly. What kind of person is he? And
I feel like Curly is someone who's always looking for lots of power. Like, since he's like the boss's son and everything, he always like walks around like, the tough guy and everything.
Yeah, he's small, like he's and short or something, and apparently he's overcompensating and he wants to project the tough guy image. There are people like that. He's living in a world of, or yeah, in a world of, or in a mind of conflict, right? Of power relationships rather than friendships, of competition rather than cooperation. How is his relationship with his wife?
I'm pretty sure she doesn't love him. Like, she's only married to him, but she doesn't love him.
Yeah, and why wouldn't she love him? Why doesn't she? He doesn't let her socialize with anyone else. Doesn't want her out of the house.
Oh yeah, keeps her cooped up.
Keeps her cooped up. Not only that, but of course, he's an extremely unpleasant person who views human relationships in terms of conflict and possession. I think she is his possession, the little jewel. He's not interested in being loved by her or making her happy. So that's why she keeps escaping and wandering about the farm and talking to the men.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little defense on her part, but does she deserve to be defended? Is she entirely innocent? Is she smart? You're welcome to talk about the last or the second last scene in the novel, her murder. Why did that happen?
Because in a way she kind of wanted to, I don't know the right word for it, like rebel from the, I don't know, like the rules. I'm not sure, but like she just didn't want to. Yeah, like I guess she didn't want to stay cooped up inside, so she's talked with Lenny, who showed an interest in her.
Right. Like
Yeah.
he shows an interest in rabbits and mice and puppies.
Yes.
Right. I think she was also desperately lonely, seeking attention. She should have been wise enough to recognize that Lenny is dangerous and not, what shall we say, mentally and emotionally mature. But then she herself is not mentally and emotionally mature. So, you know, it was a dangerous combination. Either she was going to get him killed by being with him, or he was going to kill her. Do you think the author is trying to say something about marriage in general?
The idea I get from that is there should be like trust between the two partners,
Yes, yes.
and marriage should not be an expression of power or possession. It should be rather made for a respect and love for your partner.
Right. You use the word trust. If marriage should be based on trust, then do you need to be married? Isn't it just the same as having a good friend that you can trust. What's the point of signing a contract promising to do, you know, such and such, not to do this and that? What do you think, Ryan?
I feel like if there's a if there's a contract, it makes you like think it's more serious. Like it's kind of like a bond. But if it just only rely on trust, well, most people's minds might wander.
True. Now, societies in the past didn't have contracts, and they didn't restrict people from wandering, as you say. So I'm just wondering, does the marriage contract somehow create a healthier relationship, or does it create more fear around, you know, breaking the contract?
Maybe more fear.
I think so too. And the, you know, contracts are legally binding in many cases. We use them between employers and employees. There's a so-called social contract. There's a contract between us and the government. They're all expressions of control and power. So anyway, it's a minor part of the story. We can move on to the two kinds of death. Kevin, you want to start that discussion? Could you?
Okay. So there are like two kinds of death in this book. So is it like one would be execution and the other one would be birth control?
Yeah, those are two of them. A little louder, please.
Would the two of them be execution and like birth control?
Sure, execution, birth control, euthanasia, and population control through culling, I suppose. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So those are like the two kinds of death, I guess.
That's okay. Anyone want to elaborate? How is this relevant to our novel?
They're necessary and unnecessary deaths.
Right.
Oh, I mean, I think there's a connection into it. Then how do you pronounce it? The euthanasia.
Euthanasia. That's right.
Yeah. Well, in the book, I think Candy's dog is an example of euthanasia because Candy's dog was suffering because it was blind and it couldn't eat anything, and so they killed it to put it out of its suffering.
Right.
And I mean, it's not as direct, but it could also sort of be said about Lenny, because he was going to undertake a lot of suffering from the mob, and so since they knew that would happen, they applied euthanasia.
Correct. Now, what does our society think of euthanasia?
If the patient or the patient's family agrees to it, the doctors can perform it.
So it's legal in Canada?
I'm not sure about that. Is it?
I believe it isn't yet. I think doctors can sometimes decide that if someone is completely brain dead and on life support for too long, they may recommend, but Yeah, I think it isn't entirely legal yet. For that matter, even in the Netherlands, it's not. It is legal, but there are many obstacles and conditions. So, what are your own opinions, Sophia?
On euthanasia,
Yeah,
um, I do feel like it is necessary, but I feel it needs to be like this. It needs to be taken out with like extra precaution. Like it can't. I don't believe it should be the patient's family like choosing whether or not the patient dies. I feel like it should be the patient themselves because it's their lives and
yeah.
it's like
Well,
control over your own life.
well, I have a question. If you're like in a coma, how are you supposed to respond or like make a like how are you
Yeah,
supposed to, yeah,
I
how are you
sure.
supposed to make a decision?
Correct. So, you know, I like to approach this from the real world and the possibly future ideal world perspective. Currently, the elderly get often become quite ill and immobilized, bedridden. Um, yes, comas are not so uncommon. Uh, when you're in these situations, there is no ideal solution. Um, it's like talking about abortion after someone has been raped. There is no ideal solution to that, I think. Um, but in an ideal world, uh, we wouldn't, have a healthcare system at all, and we certainly wouldn't be burdened with thousands, if not millions, of people who are bedridden, uh, brain dead, comatose, and a drain on the economy and on people's lives. As Lenny is a drain on George, and Candy's old dog is a detriment to the people around him. So, in an ideal world, we'd be living healthy until old age, when our bodies slowly shut down uh, painlessly. And if we wish, we can easily accelerate that, decline. I forgot the gentleman who did this, but forgot his name. But he had lived on a farm for the last half of his life. He had lived to the age 100 and chose to end his life by simply not eating. After 3 days, he passed away painlessly.
Oh yeah, I think you told me about that.
Yeah, I may have. What's his last name? Good or something? I don't recall.
Yeah.
Anyway, I found that quite impressive and interesting. You don't need to take a knife to yourself. You don't need poisons. And euthanasia doesn't have to happen just because you're sick and not enjoying life so much. This was just, well, I suppose he was too old to enjoy life too much, as the health of his, or the energy, at least his energy, was winding down in old age. So anyway, so much for euthanasia. Capital punishment, another arguably form of necessary death that is present in this novel. Who would like to lead that discussion? what is the book's message about execution? Arguably, Lenny and George were running away from being executed at the previous work site, previous farm, and now, after killing Curly's wife, Lenny is in danger of being lynched, shot in the stomach, most painful place I have heard. And instead, George ensures that Lenny doesn't suffer so much and is killed quickly, painlessly. It's still an execution. We could, as well as a example of euthanasia. Please, someone offer your comments, your thoughts on what the book is telling us, or what you think about execution.
I guess it's more euthanasia than execution, because like they're basically running away from execution, and I mean it's Lenny isn't being shot in this case for committing a crime. It's more to avoid being shot for committing a crime. I think
Well, he's okay. Ryan, you want to tackle that, or Sophia?
Well, either way, he's getting shot. But maybe the book is saying that in some cases, the offender, like, it's necessary to get rid of him.
Yeah, isn't George not only saving Lenny some pain, but also saving society from Lenny?
Yeah.
Right, so it's both. Sophia, what do you think? What do you think of capital punishment? We may have lost Sophia, like we did.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you didn't hear my question?
No, can you repeat it? Because
Sure.
my audio is a little laggy.
Okay, yeah, what do you think of execution and the execution of Lenny and capital punishment generally?
So in Lenny's case, I believe it was necessary. Not only like, okay, yeah, like in a way you're saving society from his like wrath and his actions, but like it was also in a way like justice, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So
It was necessary.
yeah.
Right. Well, couldn't we just, wouldn't it be fair to put him in prison?
But like when he comes out of, if it was like I mean like, I may sound like a tiny bit, okay, I may sound like a bit cynical, but that's kind of a waste of space if it was in Lenny's case, because when he comes out, he may just end up killing more people or like beings. So
Yeah.
capital punishment was necessary.
Right. I'm an optimist. I think there are better ways of dealing with criminals. Not all criminals are mentally challenged like Lenny appears to be. If we put convicted criminals in more ideal situations, I think they will become more ideal people. If we instead of putting criminals in prison, we were put them on a piece of land and say, you take care of this. Here are the skills you need. You'll be able to build your own home, feed yourself. There's a community out there of others who are living on the land. What do you think would be the results?
Maybe positive.
Maybe there's already a lot of research showing that if you just give prisoners a little gardening program, it's extremely beneficial. The recidivism rate, or the rate of being incarcerated, imprisoned a second time, greatly decreases.
I feel like because of maybe the thought process of gardening, because the feeling you get when you know that you helped life grow and you were one of the reasons that life is thriving, that
Yeah,
like that might help clear their minds a lot.
it's very rewarding and pleasurable. Um, you're not only helping life, but you might be using that life, those vegetables, plants, to feed yourself, other people. Knowing that it's good food is another good feeling. If you're working in an office, it's rare that you get to create something and watch it grow and really feel good about it every day. I think most of the work projects we have are much less rewarding than parenting could be, gardening can be. So anyway, that's so much for that topic, execution. Again, it's probably not the best solution in a world that seems to need ways of dealing with psychopathic people. Let's discuss the other one, the other topic, the other necessary death: overpopulation, birth control, perhaps, and culling, or eliminating actual individuals. What does this book say about this form of necessary death? Anyone? Surely someone remembers the scene or the discussion between Slim and, I think it was, Carlson, about the dog, Slim's dog, having given birth to, I don't know, is it 7 or 9 puppies?
And they drowned like maybe around half of them, I think.
That's right. Yeah, Slim did that.
And I think the reasoning they mentioned was because like there wasn't enough like food and milk to go around for all of them, which is
Right.
similar to why like human beings in the real world would be.
What did you say about real world?
No, I feel like that would be the same reason anybody would do culling in the first place, for any reason, and with humans too, and anyone. Basically, there wouldn't be any reason to do it unless there weren't enough resources to go around.
Yeah, well, historically, when there is extreme famine, humans end up eating each other, unfortunately. Pardon?
Cannibalism.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, wouldn't there be the ethical issue of killing people to eat them?
Well, it's like you can talk about ethics, but in these situations, ethics doesn't have much weight. It's like wartime. Do people in war really care about the rules? There are rules for war.
Mm-hmm.
The Geneva Convention or something of that sort has a list of rules. They, of course, get ignored during wartime, and then the victor tends to erase all the evidence. So, Sophia, what do you think of this topic? Population control, birth control?
Uh, um,
Is it ever necessary for a government to step in and practice population reduction?
I mean, if the population is, I mean, if more people are like suffering, I'm just thinking about like they don't have to, the government doesn't necessarily have to like kill people to reduce population. They could have, I'm just thinking about like the one-child policy in China.
Right.
Like,
But I have a question. If the world is already like severely overpopulated, how would the one-child policy do anything to help? The world is already like being completely
Well,
overwhelmed. So yeah,
if
the
everyone
one-child policy is more of like a long-term thing.
long term, actually, it's within 30, well, at least within a couple generations, you might reduce the population by 50%. Or at least in 3 generations you would. I don't really think.
if we,
Go ahead.
I'm just saying like if the one-child policy is like implemented on a global scale, then yeah, I believe it's gonna have a pretty large effect because we have if we count like the population of older people, generally like I would say like older generations, they had more children because of disease. And so, yeah.
In the past, people had more children because they were afraid they would lose some to disease.
Yeah.
Yeah, I disagree with that. Concerning the dogs that had to be killed because the mother wouldn't be able to feed them all. What is the issue there? They can't, I guess Slim can't afford to feed his dog enough. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the issue here is this really a natural situation for a dog? Their wild counterparts, wolves, how are their populations controlled? How do animals control their population? I mean, there's really no such thing as overpopulation in nature. There's a very modest level of overpopulation that's quickly fixed by predators. And then the predators find themselves too numerous for their prey, and then the predators die off. So it's always this kind of very crude balancing act. Humans should be able to do better than this. Why are we? Well, how can we do better, and why aren't we doing better than that?
Well, we're at the top of the food chain, I guess, right? So, I mean, the predator thing can't really go for us.
Correct. We are the super predators. We eat everything.
Yeah.
But and I'm not agreeing that the planet is overpopulated. It is overpopulated if we all want to have computers and phones and big homes and air conditioning and cars and refrigerators. Yeah, if we're all going to put such a huge footprint on our planet, then yes, we're overpopulated. but we don't have to live that way. And does George seem interested in living that way?
Yeah.
Does he? Does he mention refrigerator and car and
Oh yeah, no, no.
what is he interested in?
Land.
Land and perhaps a female partner?
Mhm.
Yeah, growing their own food. That's what the Crooks also wants to help grow food, take care of the garden, and I forget. I think there was it Candy who also wanted to be part of their
And
new community. I think he did want to be with them also.
yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
because he wanted something to be able to do after they were like can him.
After they can him,
Yeah.
yeah, for being old. Right. Ryan?
Yeah, not sure.
Not sure. Yeah, so I think our author deliberately avoided having George dream about, the more typical American dream is a suburban home with all the technologies that modern people have come to expect. No, George just dreams of land, a land that can support him, a home in which he can live, with a partner, with a community, perhaps. He seemed open-minded about that. So not even really interested in creating a nuclear family, as we call them now. So next topic, what is it? Is that everything for the necessary deaths?
Yeah.
I think you're right. Population control, birth control, euthanasia, execution. And I guess we should contrast this quickly with the unnecessary deaths. Lenny's, what should we call him? His kill list. Is he really killing by accident, or did he kill Curly's wife by accident?
Yeah.
I guess so. He shook her and broke her neck.
Well, in the way that he didn't want to kill her, maybe he wanted to harm her.
Yeah, silence her.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. Because you're trying to get her to stop screaming.
Right. And this is his only way, the only way he knows how to control her. I suppose it's no different than, yeah, what militaries do. There is, of course, intent, but they will always blame it on their victims. We didn't want to kill you, but you people are bad, so we had to do it. Is it possible that the government is killing people presently, accidentally?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I hadn't thought of this connection, but it might be very fruitful. Could you elaborate?
Medical malpractice.
Oh, is that happening right now?
It could be happening.
Oh, well, of course, yeah, it's constantly happening. I think in Canada we must have over 10,000 a year. In the US, it's 300,000 a year. They're approximately, depending on who you check, and I think that number is far too low. It does not even include people who die of chemotherapy, which would probably a number in the towards 1 million, perhaps just in the US alone. Of course, medical malpractice. But how about currently in this coronavirus lockdown? Could this be killing people more accidentally?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Okay, yeah, probably.
Yeah, well, any guesses on why that might happen? Sophia and Kevin, not sure either.
Not sure.
Like,
Is this lockdown healthy, physically,
Well, no.
Oh yeah,
emotionally?
no. Nope.
It's not healthy in either of those ways.
No, your voice is quite weak there, Kevin. Not sure what you said.
It's not healthy in either of those ways, mentally or physically.
Right. Sophia, could this also lead to death?
yeah, like I do believe like this self-isolation has like increased suicide deaths.
I think it will, yeah. If
Yeah,
it hasn't
depression.
already. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, because like most people, they get more and more depressed when they're not able to go outside, and they lose hope and they commit suicide.
Yeah, not only about going outside, but having lost their jobs, and people are not used to spending so much time at home with family and wives, husbands. Often people kind of get relief from each other by going to work, spending a lot of time together when, especially in this situation, can be stressful.
Yeah, it's also increased domestic violence.
Yeah, there's evidence of that. Right. How about just physical health? How could this be negative for physical health?
Well, you aren't going outside and getting your exercise, and you aren't breathing the fresh air outside or getting vitamin D from the sun.
Correct. Yeah, and we're weakening our immune systems by overly protecting ourselves from contact with germs. If it doesn't lead to sickness now, it will later when people are outside and socializing, if that ever happens again. I guess we could finish with a brief discussion of Slim. What does his name mean in Dutch and perhaps other Germanic languages? I'm sure it's in Dutch. Anyone know?
Smart.
Smart, yeah, or clever. Is he portrayed as the opposite of Lenny? Is he godlike?
Yeah, he does seem to make a lot of the decisions on the farm.
Right. Here we go. George looked over at Slim and saw the calm, godlike eyes fastened on him. And the first description of Slim is extremely flattering. He does seem almost more than human. He has extremely refined social skills. He knows how to deal with Curly's wife. He's supportive of George. He's the only person who seems to understand that George is special for being so caring about Lenny. And he's also anyone want to talk about the final scene with Slim and George? As the two of them walk off into the, well, I'm not sure if there was actual a sunset there, but Slim was there to console and support George in his action. Said that he had no choice in the matter. And them walking away from the farm seems to me to suggest that they have a future together beyond the farm. I'm sure our queer and gender theory academics would love to interpret that scene as evidence that Steinbeck supported homosexuality and alternative sexual orientations. Anyone want to touch that?
What century was this book set in?
The story is set in the Great Depression, 1930s, and the book was written. Kevin, when was it written?
I forget. Wait. Like you said, just under a century ago? Oh,
Yeah, I think it was about 85 years ago.
Yeah, 1937 was when it was written.
Yeah.
Well, maybe Steinbeck was trying to promote like LGBTQ kind of.
Do you think that was that the author's intent?
Not sure about that.
Yeah, I highly doubt it. After all, both George and Slim went to have some fun. Where did they go when they left the farm briefly? Oh, no one knows. No one seems to know the novel so well.
So, like, get a drink, go to the bar.
Yeah, they did want to have a drink, but it wasn't only that. I think there was a. Pardon?
Am I allowed to say that I'm taking a guess, like a prostitute house?
Yeah. Prostitutes, a house of prostitution?
Yeah.
Right. And I think it was it Candy or Carlson or someone who said this new house of prostitution was quite good because they don't force you to purchase their services. You're allowed to sit around and just have a drink. So in any case, that's I think that would silence any argument that Steinbeck was suggesting that that he was supporting homosexuality and other non-heterosexual relationships. Prostitution is, isn't much said there, so we probably shouldn't spend much time on it. Was there one more topic? One thing I forgot to talk about? Yes, here. This is one of two occasions on which Slim comments on how it's quite unusual for two guys to hang out and support each other, travel together. He never seemed to be wondering if they are homosexual. This seems to be quite a different viewpoint or perspective. He says, ain't many guys who travel around together. I don't know why. Maybe everybody in the whole damn world is scared of each other. So this does relate to this subject of friendship, but I feel like this gets watered down way too much in classrooms where teachers talk about friendship in the abstract and never make it relevant to the world we're living in, a world in which there is little use for friendship anymore. And friendship is nearly extinct. How does it happen? Do you agree with me? Sophia, Ryan, Kevin, this is our last topic.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. Is friendship nearly dead? Are people scared of each other? Or seemingly.
Right now, maybe in our society currently, right now, maybe people are maybe afraid of being around people because of the virus.
Yeah. It's very literally true now. In the past, were people scared of each other? That's debatable. I think I don't see too much evidence of actual fear of each other. Hesitancy to, or does our society encourage friendship? Is it just kind of, what's the word, destroyed by the nature of our capitalistic society and the way we structure education and how we've destroyed family and community? Anyone want to go into some details there?
I feel like friendships are nowadays like more forced. Like when I think back to when I was younger, like it wasn't like I spent time with that person and we eventually gradually became friends. It was more like let's be friends, and yeah, we became friends.
Yeah, there's still time for friendship, especially in elementary school. It gets harder in high school. Why is anyone, or sorry, Ryan, what do you think?
Because I feel like people are more caught up with schoolwork. They have their own interests and other things to do. So maybe they have less time to socialize. Maybe it's only through social media. There's less physical contact with the person. Like
Yes, and right, and
conversation.
even the way high schools are structured, you're moving from different class to different class, meeting or being with different students in each class.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then of course you enter university and it's even more fractured, bigger classrooms and more choices to choose from. So you're less likely to see the same person more than once in a day. And then in our capitalist work world, what role does friendship have? Not a whole lot.
Yeah.
It's we say dog eat dog world. And people take orders from bosses, and they might have co-workers, but they're rarely close friends. And then there's just no time for friendship, no place for it in the economy, and no time for it afterwards because people are too busy. And yeah, most people don't know who their neighbors are, or if they know, they're certainly not friends with their neighbors, not in any serious sense. Okay, well, we have to resist all this, of course, fight the direction of history so far. Definitely resist what our leaders are trying to create through this coronavirus facade. They're using it to impose many policies that are unhealthy for us. So destroying friendships. I know some of you have friends that you would love to see again because, well, you normally saw them at school and now you don't go to your school anymore. So let's do our best to at least discuss with others what we think about the situation we're in and where we should be going instead. I don't think this situation is going to get better in the near future. In fact, I think there's probably this lockdown will probably never be canceled by our governments. It might be refined, reduced, and then they will tighten the restrictions again, and then they will ease them again, and we'll never be back where we were, and we'll get used to, well, will we get used to it? I think they're asking too much from people, especially if we keep people aware of how unhealthy and unethical this situation is. Well, thank you very much for being with me and another SBSN podcast. We'll hope to see you again. And good night, all.
Good night.
Good.
Right.